Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I'm just going to wait another minute while we continue to let people in. Okay, everyone, I'm going to get started. My name is Melissa Moranci. I'm the Director of Climate Action Pledge Programs at AIA. We are doing something new this year. We're doing a fall refresher on all things 2030 reporting and the DDx, and this is the first presentation. It is really about remembering how to submit projects and use the DDx as a whole. So I'm going to do a little bit of a background presentation, reminding everyone why we do this every year, and then get into some specifics. So these are our learning objectives. We're going to explain how the 2030 commitment and DDx can support collecting, tracking, and analyzing data on the portfolio of buildings your firm designs. We're going to navigate the basics of the DDx, including managing your company dashboards and projects. There'll be plenty of times for questions later. We'll identify the 3 methods of inputting projects into the DDx and learn about the different strategies firms take to undertake to report their portfolios and understand what basic information is needed to input a project into the DDx, as well as other information. So I'm going to start with just some background again on why are we doing this. So what role does the built environment play in a changing climate? So in 2018, the UN Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change reported that we needed to limit the global temperature change to 1.5 degrees Celsius. I'm sure we've all heard this before, requiring a rapid and far-reaching improvements to reach 0 by 2050. So why this is important is in the graph on the right, you can see there are different paths. So one being kind of if we don't really make any changes and what the high CO2 emissions would be, and then the lowest, the blues being the very low emissions. And so we need to address our building stock immediately to help try to meet these goals. In August of 2021, the UN IPCC did report that it may already be too late to get that 1.5 degrees, but we still want to make sure that we limit our overall impact on the built environment to the best of our ability, because more CO2 just means more bad things. So we have our ability to impact that. And why is the building industry particularly important in this effort? And that is because we are very we have a large percentage of the overall greenhouse gas emissions are connected to the buildings and the built environment. As you can see on the graph on the right, building operations are responsible for about 28% of global emissions, and building materials and construction is responsible for around 11% of global emissions. So between operational and embodied carbon, we have the ability to make a really big impact. So what does the 2030 commitment mean for our industry? The US has added more than 50 billion square feet of building stock since 2005, and architects have helped reduce the building sector CO2 emissions by 30% over the same period. So while the building stock is growing, we are not necessarily growing our emissions, and that is wonderful, and that means we're being successful. Our 2030 commitment is to support the 2030 challenge that was issued by Architecture 2030, and our goal is to transform the practice of architecture in a way that is holistic, firm-wide, project-based, and data-driven. So we're going to get back into the how we actually address that on a project basis in a minute. And now we're going to talk a little bit on how to track 2030 commitment data. And we will do a live demo of the DDx after that. But most of you may know the Design Data Exchange is a cloud-based confidential reporting tool created by the AIA that allows you to compare projects by type, size, climate, and other attributes across the 2030 portfolio. These are dispelling a few of the myths around the 2030 commitment. It does not take forever to input a project. It really takes less than 30 minutes, and probably, if you actually have the information on hand, even less than that. 30 minutes might actually include running around your firm, asking everyone else the appropriate questions. All data is aggregated and anonymous. So you are the only ones that sees project by project information at your firm. Anything that is shared wider is turned into overall anonymous data. So we might make big conclusions about schools, but your project will never be personally called out or shared. Making progress is more important than meeting the targets. So we are at a high level of trying to meet an 80% reduction from baseline right now, and we really made 49% in 2022. So we know that we are not achieving our goals, but we really want to make that incremental progress. So from a firm by firm basis, make sure you are trying to improve your overall portfolio during the reporting period. The 2030 is a framework to set energy targets early and design and track that progress. So you have the ability to track progress at every design phase, so SD, all the way up through construction administration, and even the ability to connect post-occupancy data into the DDx, so you can see what your predicted energy use was and how the project is actually performing. An impact happens across your entire portfolio, not just the high-performing projects. So please include all active projects at any phase that you have data to share on. Include all architecture projects with a minimum scope. So determine what that minimum scope is within your firm and share projects that have an EUI or an LPD, or that you know kind of the overall size and what the code you're building towards. So if it has an HVAC system or a substantial envelope modifications, those are really important to include, as well as interior projects that include lighting design. So everyone can connect in the DDx. So while some people, some firms have everybody in their firm have their own account, there are 2 levels of accounts. You can be an employee or an administrator, and you can have as many people in your firm join the DDx as you would like. So company administrators can review the invites and approve the new users. So random people can't get into your overall account. Somebody who is an admin has to approve them. And just a reminder to everyone, there are 3 pathways to reporting. One is direct input, so that is interacting with the DDx platform itself. The second is bulk import, so this is when you download the spreadsheet and probably are tracking your data at an in-house database. You match up your spreadsheet to our spreadsheet, and you upload all of your projects in one fell swoop into the DDx. And the third is via energy modeling software through an API. So you can be in the Cove tool and export your project straight from Cove tool into the DDx and report that way. So we will talk about a little bit more about those later. I just want to do a little bit of a recap on where we are right now. This is slightly outdated already. The 2030 commitment is an actionable climate strategy that gives us a set of goals and standards, and we have been growing pretty steadily recently, and we are actually up to 1,300 signatory firms, which is wonderful. I also want to talk a little bit, I think a lot of you are previous, sorry. A lot of you are previous reporters, and I just want to recap a little bit about the value of energy modeling, some information that came from our 2020 report. While energy modeling is not required to report a project, and we'll dive a little bit deeper into that in a minute, you can see that energy modeling has actually been going down over the past 3 years. So we have actually lost about 15% of projects being energy modeled in the DDx in the past 3 years. And in that same time, we have gone down to 48% reduction from at that peak of a 51% reduction of EY. So I do think that our lack of energy modeling is starting to have an impact on our overall industry-wide reporting. And that is really important to consider if we want to make a difference. In turn, though, this shows the difference between energy modeling and code. So non-modeled projects are frequently building to code in the DDx. So you can pick an energy modeling, or you can pick the code that you're building towards locally, and we will do kind of there's a back-end math that says what that would be what your predicted reduction would be based on that energy code. And that is at its high, it's up to 46%, which is amazing that code equivalencies would get us doing that well. Whereas energy modeling projects are also performing less well as a whole, down to 49%. So even the projects that are energy modeled are not performing as well as they were a few years ago. And so those are things that I just want you all as users of the DDx and the 2030 commitment to be aware of. Since this is the aggregated data, while you might see little trends within your firm, I just wanted to call attention to this bigger trend. It is great for codes, and it's bad for us all, though. So something to consider as we move forward. I'm going to hop into a DDx demo, but before I do that, does anyone have any general questions about the overall 2030 commitment program that you want me to answer right now as I switch over to that? And please feel free to put in questions into the chat as we go. I'm happy to answer questions as we are moving through. Again, this is a refresher. We want to make sure that we are reminding everyone what the DDx is, what the reporting process looks like, so everyone is ready to go in the new year. So this may be a pretty basic presentation for some of you who are well adept, but we want to make sure that everyone remembers how to report, and we talk about it frequently and in detail. So we're going to start. Yep.
Sorry. Hi. Sorry. Just wanted to my unmute was not working. So when you say reported at any phase, it means that if the project is already done and is in construction, we shouldn't. If it's already in design, we have to report it. Am I right?
So we have all the design phases from schematic or concept all the way through construction administration. And so if your project was in construction administration in 2023, you can report that as construction administration. If you have post-occupancy data, you can report that in a different place. But there's probably going to be a little bit of a gap, right, between when you're in construction administration and you have real data. So depending on where a project hit during 2023, that will be important to note. So if your project was not finished until February of 2023, you can report it as construction administration, the last set of data that you had as construction administration in this reporting year, and then close out that project. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, just one another thing is if there's a project that is actually in DD, for example, this year, and then I report it as a DD, and then for the next year reporting, I'm going to change the same profile of that project to a CD, for example. Am I
Correct.
right? Okay, good. Thank you.
Yep, we'll go over where you find that field in the DDX in a minute.
Thank you.
A question in the chat is, will WUFI passive be added to the list of softwares you're able to directly import from? That is a good question. I don't actually have control over the softwares that create a connection. So in the DDX help pages, we have instructions of any energy modeling software that would like to use an API to the DDX, but we do not create their part of the connection to the DDX. They need to do that themselves. So that is a great question to ask them and encourage them to bridge that gap. Can I speak more to the confidentiality of the DDX attribute to a specific firm? Andrew, can you expand on that question? You can come off mute if you want. If you can. If it's not flattering, could it become public? No. No project level information is shared out to the public if you don't want it to. So project level information would only be shared by a firm. Everything that AIA shares is an aggregate. So it's anonymous aggregate data. So we do not, the aviation sector is a good question. I don't believe that there is a target in Target Finder for aviation. People address that in different ways depending on what type of information or what part of aviation you're looking at. And so we would probably dig deeper into a question like that in one of our future webinars. I know that if it doesn't involve security or like baggage information, I know other people who have treated it like retail, like a mall, or you know, it has for other kinds of retail situations. If it's just a terminal versus if it has security or any kind of baggage situation in which the EUI would be higher just because of the electric. Why don't you email me, Priel, after this, and anyone can email me after this, and I will try to connect you with other folks or myself after that. So I'm going to get back to the little demo for a minute. All right, so this is the interface when you first log into the DDX that you would see. This particular account is an admin. And so it does have a couple of extra features. Under company, you can see that all of our projects are listed here, the different studios and offices, and then all of our employees. And so I can add and approve employees in this area. This is also where you would find the API request logs. So if you were using an API, you do need to connect it to your firm. So you would need to generate a user key and then you have a firm key. And those are two pieces of information that you would put in that energy modeling tool. And that would allow you to do that direct import. So this is under the company tab is where you would find that API request. The user key does expire, I think it's 24 to 48 hours. So if you log into the DDX and you don't put that into your energy modeling software, you will need to do that again. And that's really for security purposes. So that is important to remember. In this area, you would also find the 2030 welcome kit and the link to creating a sustainability action plan that works, as well as badges and information around your overall portfolio. So you can see past portfolios that you've submitted, And you get the cute little badge that says how long you've been reporting for. And so you also have all the account information up top. So I'm going to go into the portfolio, and here you can see our top performing projects in the upper left-hand corner as well, and then our overall list of projects below. In this list of projects, you do have the ability to change the columns and sort by other things. So you can decide what you might want to sort through there. And then let's jump into a project and just look through some of the fields here in the DDx. So we are in a project. On this landing page, we have the basic information. This is an active project. It is performing better than our overall firm and better than other similar projects in the DDx. It has a 79% reduction from baseline. It was last reported in 2021. And then this is the basic project information. You have the ability to edit that if you would like. And then it's a small office. You have the ability to edit that if you would like. And this is your overall target and energy savings down here. So I'm going to hop back to the portfolio and show you how to input a project into the DDx. So we're going to create a new project. And this project is an active project. Here is a firm project number. So this is important in that it's auto-generated number. Every project in the DDx has its own number. But if you have a certain naming nomenclature at your firm, you can insert that there. This is a whole building project. It is new construction. In what firm or what office it's coming out of? It's coming out of our DC office in the United States. In DC. I will say a new update that is happening in the DDx for 2023 reporting is you used to be able to put a zip code for wherever and it didn't actually connect to the state. And now you will not be able to make that mistake. So if I said, it hasn't been rolled out yet, but if I said this was in Kentucky, when you guys are reporting for 2023, it will yell at you if you get the wrong state and zip code together, which is good for our overall accuracy moving forward. So then I'm going to say the estimated occupancy year is 2026. I'm using ICC 2021. Those are the required fields in this area. Average occupants is optional. Estimated building costs, site work costs, and total construction costs are also optional, but great data to add. I'm going to add what this project type is. I'm going to say it is a large office with, then I'm going to, so when I typed in this use type and area, it gave me our baseline EUI in the bottom left-hand corner. But I can also add, there is some education here as well. And that will change our overall baseline. So that will change the baseline. You can add as many project or use types as you would need. So if you also had some sort of restaurant or retail in there, you can add those as additional options, and that would continue to average out your overall baseline based on your square footage of each project type and how that works in the building. So we'll save this information. And here we have a little box and whisker graph. So you can see this is education general and office and compare the overall. So within this graph, you can see what other projects are similar to yours in this project type. and how those are performing. This is what your target EUI would be. And then we're going to save and move on. So as this says, we do not have design information in here yet. So we can go here and track data, or we can go down here and add design phase data. So I'm going to say that this project is in DD during 2023. So 2023 should be the default because that is the current reporting year. And this could be the base level of information that you put in there. Based on the IECC code, I would be getting a 50% reduction from baseline. But, oh, where is the baseline information coming from? What if it varies from an energy modeling baseline? Ideally, the baseline data is the same. So our baseline information, so when you put in your zip code and you track that information, it is talking to Target Finder. And Target, or not, I'm sorry, not talking to Target Finder anymore. It was talking to Target Finder. It's now talking to the Zero tool, which is our, based on the 2003 CBEX. So that is the improvements that we've been basing this entire program on. That's what Architecture 2030 based the targets on, is an 80% reduction from the 2003 CBEX. So the Zero tool is currently run by Architecture 2030 because it used to be connected to Target Finder, but Target Finder moved on and used as a new baseline. So we had to create a similar data set. So you can have other information. You could have a different baseline, and you could have a different in an energy modeling platform, and you can do that. If a project's duration of design and construction spans multiple years, how do we choose a reporting year? So you are reporting for 2023. So if it is in construction documents in 2023, then that is what you are putting in during this reporting year. So where the project ends at the end of the year. And that is the most important piece of information. And in 2024, this project will move on, and maybe it will be in, well, let's be real, it could be in construction documents again in 2024. But it might move on to construction administration in 2024. And then next year, you would report the project for that year in that phase. Does that make sense? Because what we're trying to do is get a snapshot of where we are as an industry at the end of 2023. Kind of like taxes. We're looking backwards over the course of this year, and we are documenting where we are at the end of it. So we will only be reporting projects for 2023. So the other part, I think, as part of that reference, if you look in this basic project information that we had entered at the beginning, I said the occupancy year we thought would be 2026. So theoretically, we would be reporting on this project for another 2 years or another 3 years after this. And so we would identify the other phases as we went through, and we would have multiple years of data on this project as we move forward. So here we have a lot of additional options of information. So again, we can report a project with just the code and we could be done. But as I said earlier, that value of energy modeling is super important. So we're going to say we did do predicted energy use, and we used the energy modeling tool Insight, and it was done by an engineer. And then you can say how much it cost, but that is an optional. You can put in just your basic gross EUI and net EUI here. Or if you have additional information, you can go into fuel sources and actually input information based on if you have fuel source data. The reason this is important, not that you have to do it, again, it's optional, is that it's going to be more accurate. So these are the fields that if you have that information available, it'll really increase our accuracy of reporting, but it's not necessary. So we can say, no, we don't have fuel sources for this project, but I do know that the gross EUI is 35, but the net EUI is 7, which is great because I think our target was 12. But it does mean I had renewables. And here I would say that we have PV, And we do have offsite renewables as well. And then you can add additional information about different kinds of renewables and their offsite renewable type. We also still have the ability to do LPD under whole building projects. If you do select interior only, you would not have the EUI fields because that is not the kind of project you are working on. You would be really working on the predicted lighting power and density. So if you have that information, you can put that there. So saying yes opens up that field. And then we have an place for embodied carbon. Last year we went up to 3,800 projects. So it was a really great increase. And these are the questions we have currently in embodied carbons. You include your embodied carbon date. So say that was September 18th, my number, what tool do we use? You can say what version of the modeling tool if you have it. And we like that 60 years. And I'm going to say we only did substructure and superstructure for product stage A1 through A3. And we did not include biogenic carbon in this calculation. You also have the ability to do a window to wall ratio. But if I save that information, it will update this based on that energy modeling information. It changes to a 92% reduction from our 50% code reduction, which is great. Question in the chat. Is the baseline via the zero tool using all the default values to calculate the number being generated, number of computers we can use, etc.? It's not that specific. It is really a generalized version. So in offices, it will be averaging the energy use of all the offices where they were at in 2003. To get a more specific information, you would need to do an energy model to truly know about computers and weekend use and things like that. It's a deeper level of detail than the zero tool. I mean, again, it would be the averages in 2003, which would probably be very different about computer use now versus then and things like that. So that deeper level of information would have to come from an energy modeling source. All right, so we have looked at that project. We've looked at our company. We have an entire submit portfolio. Only admins see this. So you would then select 2023 and continue. Here you get to select what projects you want to include. So I would want to, exclude anything that is a test project. And then you say you confirm that this is my portfolio. You can give consent for AI to publish information, but you do not have to select that, and then you would continue. And then you'll get this page and it'll say it's processing the submission, and you can return to portfolio. So another path, and this is funny because it's been a minute since I have gone through the overall reporting process. So you can import projects through your bulk import. I'm going to take a little side note here for a second before I get into bulk import. The one thing to remember is over here in the upper right-hand corner is our help pages. Our help pages are really well detailed and very informative. So you can go to our help pages and you can find on the left-hand side, it looks like it's not a lot of information. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 little tabs, but they all get bigger. The level of detail here is amazing, guys. So make sure you check here if you are looking and struggling with anything, but you can type anything into this search bar. So if I type in bulk import and I want to add projects through bulk import, it gives me you can find a video, you can find instructions. We have a handy dandy, which is still being updated for this year. Bulk import guide. That's not it. Where'd it go? Bulk import guide. I don't know where it's going. Maybe it's behind. There we go. 2 screens. The bulk import guide will get into very levels of detail on how you make sure everything is perfect in your bulk import. So you can go through here, see the different steps, see where you import it, find the information. And then it gets into a serious level of detail talking about the different project numbers, what are required fields, what are optional. Goes into a lot of detail on all of that. You can continue to see all the information in there. And that is really helpful and important in the bulk import process. So if we go to bulk import, you can also download a sample Excel that will help you understand or give you a template of what the fields are. We are doing a few updates to that for this year, but nothing too dramatic. You then choose your file here. And that's where you would select it, and then you would import. If you want to directly import to the portfolio submission, you select that and you select your reporting year. And you can do that. Let's actually see if I have that. So I have so many of them. I was trying to find the one I made last year for it to be wrong. But if you have wrong fields, you'll get a little error report in the bottom. You go back into the spreadsheet and you update those fields and you upload it again. And then you can again either report your portfolio right from here, or you would then see those projects in this list afterwards, and you can select them the same as the old-fashioned way. All right, a couple of questions in here. Is there a resource that would help folks understand how to come up with a PEUI for their project if they're not doing energy modeling? If you're not doing energy modeling, I can't think of a way. But if there is someone practicing that is smarter than me on this call that knows of a way to do a PEUI without an energy model, let me know. Why was there an energy reduction in the DDx example before you had input any additional data beyond project info? So the reason that there was in the project, there was a number here, the percentage of reduction. So I'm going to get into a little bit of a specific on that one. So we had a percentage of reduction, and that's based on the code I put in. So I had said that we were building to an IECC 2021 code, and that reduction was based on that code. So again, if you go into the DDx help pages, we worked with New Buildings Institute, NBI, and they helped us create equivalencies for different codes within the process. So if you go down here and you click on the table, you can see what percentage of reduction these codes that are options in there would give you. And so if we scroll down to 2021 IECC, that is the equivalent of a 50% reduction from baseline. And then we provide where that research came from and how that percentage was, how we got there. I think it's important to understand that's not perfect. it's squishy, it's a guesstimate, but it's our best ability to do that. And I think that the thing to remember is that does not give you like that EUI. So it's not as accurate. Yes, thank you, Sarah. So I think that it's not as accurate. Energy modeling is definitely going to give us a better, more accurate answer. But if you ever do want to dive a little bit deeper into the different energy codes and what the research says their equivalencies are, you can pop over to this handy dandy chart. And you can even see, again, their methodology and their data sources. So why we believe it to be that. And so we do try to keep the codes updated to the best of our ability, but it is also based on our ability to collect that information. All right. So I'm kind of going to open it up a little bit to some reporting questions. I see one in the Q&A. I use Cove Tool. When I direct upload from there, I cannot use energy codes more recently than 2025. So that is definitely something you should talk to Cove Tool folks about, see if they want to update their energy codes. But I will also say that once you import a project from Cove Tool, it will be a part of your overall portfolio. And while not as convenient, you will be able to edit your energy code in the DDx after you upload that information. That's interesting. Well, we obviously have lots of codes that are more recent than 2021. So you can upload that, update that on that side, or you can talk to them and figure out what that problem is in the API for their backend. Interesting. That's intriguing. Jennifer, I'll look into that. Can the DDx update the codes available to newer than 2025? Yeah. That would be the API, and whether or not the API would be updated. And that nobody from Cove Tool has ever told me that before. Nobody else had ever told me that before. So I can't say that it is on my to-do list to have that updated between now and January, as there are a lot of other things on that to-do list. But Jennifer, I'll definitely see what we can do about that in the future. But you can edit it once you get it into the DDX. So not a perfect solution, but it doesn't have to be a 2015 code forever. Does anyone need anything re-explained, re-demonstrated? For a data center, no one really talks about PUI. It's always PUE. Is there a way to use PUE? What is PUE? I am calling myself out as a non-practicing architect who never worked on a data center at the moment, but I don't actually know what that is. So I don't know if there's an equivalent. I do know that there are a lot of data centers in the DDX, and that they obviously all perform very poorly. They're very big energy hogs. And so they're not a part of our great performers. Power usage effectiveness. Yes, please email me about that. And I will see if I can connect you to somebody who knows more than me about that. All right. Once we've reported our projects, is there a way to view the data points in a graph to show the office trends over time? James, that's a great question. You just reminded me that I didn't show you the reports tab. So right here we have the reports tab, and it is for our 2023 reporting year. It says what our net PUI reduction is, our embodied carbon gross square footage of projects, our energy modeled projects versus our non-energy modeled projects, our CO2 emissions intensity, and an LPD. This page will be changing a little bit. Well, not really, but you can also go back to previous years. So you can compare your 2022 data, which was and 83.6 to our 2023 data, which is a 79.75. So you can start to track your overall performance over the course of time. So you can go back to other years and see how you performed then. And obviously we didn't use this account in 2019. If a project changes from DD to CD mid-year, it gets reported as CD. Yes, it does. So you can create multiple data points in a year. So you could report it as DD at the beginning of the year and CD at the end of the year, and create two different kind of data points in that project for that year. Can I explain the different areas? The initial area based on use and the gross PUI and net PUI? How is this related to the conditioned space or projects with underground, unconditioned parking or semi-conditioned areas of the building? And I do want to note, I know that some people are dropping off, which is fine. I do have a little bit of at the end of this, I'm gonna swing back and do a little bit of a precursor on our 2023 reporting and show you a couple of new updates. Esther, I'm gonna have to ask you to expand on that. So we really are looking at condition space because we want to see which spaces are affected by HVAC.
Yeah, Melissa, so we do a lot of mixed use projects. So they have, parking, retail, units, office, it's a real mixed bag. And when you identify the uses and you say how much square footage, it's like, okay, it's parking, but that's not really conditioned space. And so it's hard for me to understand how that relates to the energy model calculation, the PUI, and then also just the difference between gross PUI and net PUI. Do I get that from the energy model report?
So parking is a project type that you can put in. And so at least the baseline would be judged on that as a project type. All the rest of the information, if you are having an energy model, would be found there. So again, the more detailed information of the actual performance would be based on the energy modeling information, but we can incorporate parking, like a parking structure into part of that. So if we said for this one, we also had 8,000 square feet of parking, which is sad. I should have picked a bigger project. But our baseline EUI is 61. And what does that change it to? Oh, I'm having an issue with that. So I'll have to come back to that one in a minute. We have a bug. So the reporting deadline is March 31st, as per always. And Esther, if you have additional questions, please email me or the 2030 commitment, and we'll see if we can work on that in more detail. Sure. All right. What would you say the most reliable carbon accounting tool? If we as architects are doing the embodied carbon accounting as opposed to a consultant doing the full LCA, we can sometimes get varying data. So I'm going to ask if some expert on here wants to weigh in. AIA is agnostic as to what tool you use, and we cannot endorse any particular tool saying one tool is better than the other because we are an association, and I could get in trouble for advocating for a private tool. So I cannot weigh in on that. I am sure there is an expert on this call that can say what their preferred energy modeling tool for accuracy is. I'm like scooting through some names and see if I want to call anybody and make them answer that question. Not seeing a lot of people I know, which is great. But that's a good question. And that is a great question to ask in our base camp. So maybe drop that one over in to the 2030 base camp, and we will be able to know what that is over there. Sorry, I can't be of more help. All right, one more question before I show you guys some new information. What is a best practice for how often a firm should collect project data and how often they should submit data? Yearly, quarterly, every time a project shifts to a new phase? That is a great question. I think that that varies from firm to firm. My recommendation is really quarterly or project phase. So I think, you know, when we go through that process of changing the phases and all the drawings and, you know, that shift from everything saying DD on it to CD, that's a great time to say where you are in a project. I know some of the larger firms do quarterly check-ins, especially when it's more distributed. So if everyone's in the DDx, making sure everyone's doing their work over the course of the whole year versus waiting till that January to March timeframe, and trying to make sure that you do a little bit over time. So I think it's best if firms determine what works for them. So if there's another thing that you do quarterly, is this something that you can make into that normal practice? It's important to make sure that you integrate it into your firm as something that you regularly address and that you consider frequently. So I think that that will change from firm to firm, but I would definitely lean on either quarterly or design phase shifts. Perfect. We have a response to the question about embodied carbon tools. If anyone wants to review that in the chat. All right, so I'm going to go back to my presentation for a second. This was our little DDx demo. So up first, we have more refreshers coming up, and I'm going to try to drop these into the chat. On Monday, we have a reminder as to why energy modeling, a case for energy modeling. Again, that data and information not being as great as we would like it to be. What can we do for energy modeling? Why is it important and how does it help us? And then we also have a webinar about what does 2030 mean for firm culture on November 14th. So those are other webinars you can join. And on, I don't have a link to this one, so let me see if I can. There we go. Then you're going to get a little sneak peek in the next 5 minutes, but we also will have a webinar on December 5th about updates to the DDx. So I'm going to give you a very quick look on that. Throwing that link into the chat if you want to register for that webinar. So the little sneak peek, we are integrating eGrid into the DDx. So we, in our report, always have the carbon numbers or our carbon calculations in the report, but it's not integrated in a project by project. So we will be integrating eGrid, and you will see what your kilograms of CO2e are for each project. And that's really exciting for us to see that impact and look at our projects beyond EUI. And we are bringing back the research tab. It is not the research tab that folks remember from 2017 or whatever. And this is not exactly what it will look like. We are making some last minute adjustments, and hopefully we'll launch that in the next couple of weeks. But we are going to have the ability to compare your data using the DDx dataset filters. So in this, you can see there's the DDx data versus your firm data on a particular project. You have the ability to put in all these criteria on the right-hand side on what those are. and you can see the different projects. If the filters on the right-hand side mean that there's less than 10 projects, you will not see the DDx that equal those parameters. You will not see it. The DDx data is based on the last reporting year. So this year, when you look at it, it will all be based on 2022 reporting. In that we wanted to make sure we eliminated all those test projects that you guys have in there that are not necessarily real. We didn't want any of those to skew the overall data set. As you can see, everything in my little test account is a fake project, and they're performing very well. So we don't want that to influence the overall data set. So these are just projects that you all have acknowledged are real projects. And that is very exciting. I think the other thing I want to note is that one big change for especially people who are doing bulk import, we have been asking for tool types. So what kind of energy modeling tool are you using when you are using one? And what we found is that you don't tell us. So you just click other and you move on. And that is not very helpful for our overall research and data. So we are going to now, if you select other, you're going to get one of those little fields that like insert the name of tool here. So you can't just click other and move on. We really want to know what energy modeling tools you're using. And this is also really important to our relationship with DOE. We work with the DOE on the DDx, and we share some information with them, again, aggregate, so they can help support you with the best tools. But if we don't say what tools we're using, that information is not valuable. And I think in the 2022 report, like 80% of the projects are an other tool. And we know that's not true. So we're really going to force you all to fill in that field as we move forward. So I'm going to stick around for another couple minutes. If anyone else has questions, I'm still here. Feel free to drop them in the chat. And otherwise, thank you so much for attending.